hip hop soul in the crowd. Yeah.
All right, folks, welcome back. Another week of the Rob and Stu Show. And today, once again, I mean, it's getting closer and closer, Roberto. That's why we got to bring in the fourth man, Mr. Wednesday Night, Mr. Prime Time Player. He's a real PTPer, the original gangster, Chris Van Dine, CVD. How are you, brother?
I'm good. I'm good. College football only a month away. We got most of the FCS magazine rolled out. We popped that out the other day, and it's been a lot of fun learning about these FCS teams, just because there's a lot of value in the FCS market these days. Everyone knows everything about most of the college football teams, especially the Power Fives, but the FCS is an untapped market, and learned a lot in these last couple weeks. I wrote the Missouri Valley, the SoCon, the Patriot, the Ivy League, and the part of the Big South OVC and some of the CAA for now no longer the Colonial, now the Coastal Athletic Association. So
get it right.
That's
get
been
it right or
He's on
get
top
canceled.
of that. He's on their email train.
Oh yeah. Oh, Chris, I'm already working my way through the Patriot
fan club.
League. Look, you need to pipe down over there. Just because you just choose to watch Rutgers, who belongs in FCS, right?
How dare you?
Okay, Chris, who's better in the Big Ten, Fordham or Rutgers? Your thoughts?
Who was Mel Tucker's first loss in the Big Ten?
Hey, who would have more wins this year, Sacred Heart or Rutgers?
Oh man,
Go
I'm
ahead.
not going to go to Rob. It'll be Rutgers. It would be Rutgers. Last year I'd give Fordham a fighting chance because they had Demorad, but not this year.
Yeah, that's tough.
Unfair.
That's tough.
Unfair. Assault.
Well, let's do a little bit more assault. We got ACC CVD. He is the ACC guy for Phil Steele. Still time to go get your books. If you're a schlub and you forgot to pre-order, unlike me and Rob, we pre-order. We've been enjoying the book for weeks, months.
Absolutely.
At this point.
As soon as I learn how to read, this thing's going to be perfect. I mean,
yeah,
the
the
classes
pictures
are coming
really
together.
help. I find the pictures really help you out.
Hey, and I'm the picture guy too. I
There
get
you
all
go.
the
That's
pictures.
There you
excellent.
go. You might have seen my emails.
There
I've
is-
emailed Phil a couple of times. Maybe we can get some pop outs or something going on for somebody on my education level.
There is one school in the country does not send us photos. I'm not gonna say who it is, but it's a rival of a team that Stu's wearing a shirt of. So
Not surprising.
Tough shot at Sam Houston State.
no, Sam Houston, those guys are good guys.
Yeah. We well, and folks, if you want more Sam Houston State talk,
Boomer Pooper wants us to buy photos though.
yeah,
Stu's going to link his phone number in the bottom of the podcast, and then you could call him at like 2 a.m. and you guys he'll break
if
down.
you want to talk a
whatever you
little
wanna break down.
Sam Houston State football at 2 a.m., I'm your guy. But let's break it into the ACC. We're going to do it a little bit different. We're going purely off the win totals, brought to you by Roberto and a myriad of books that he's picked from. Rob, can you start at the bottom? Let's start from the bottom, work our way to the top, like Drake said. CVD's favorite artist, by the way, Drake.
Absolutely. All right, we'll start
No,
off here.
No.
We'll start off here because it's right on the top of my chart is Boston College. So I'm going to rearrange them.
Oh boy.
5.5
boy.
wins over under. Shout out to our boy Joe Baggs, loyal listener, foxhole guy Joe Baggs. I mean, I don't want to pick on him for his team, but 5.5. I know, Stu just loves to ride people when they're down. He's picking on them every day on Twitter.
I'm not.
You're a bully. You're a bully. Over under right here. What do you think? 5.5.
I've right around that number. I had 6, possibly 7. So if I'm taking it, I'm taking the over. They have a particularly weak non-conference schedule. You've got Northern Illinois, Holy Cross, at Army and at home against UConn. Not sure what Northern Illinois this year. Actually, the funny thing is the toughest non-conference game they might have is Holy Cross. Might be a top 10 FCS team, but Boston College should handle that game. Big difference in Boston College this year is last year they came into the season with 0 returning offensive line starters back. Their offensive line had 2 career starts coming back after they lost Christian Mahogany in the spring. He was a projected first-round pick. He stuck around. Now they've got over 100. The exact number,
137.
Yeah, 137 career starts on the offensive line. They added some transfers in. Kid from Texas State, Kyle Hergel. So this is a big difference on the offensive line. Emmett Moorhead, very similar size and stature as Dracovic. Garwo, I think, is going to get back to more of what we saw 2 years ago, running the ball. I know they lost Zay Flowers, but I do like the addition of Ryan O'Keefe from UCF. Defensively, they're solid. They've got a couple of decent corners. I like Elijah Jones. 13 pass breakups, 2 interceptions last year. The front seven isn't spectacular, but I do know that Hafley really likes his defensive ends. So, the question is the schedule. And like I said, it's a week early schedule. They get the 4 non-conference games that I think they should win all 4 of them. You get Virginia at home. There's a 5th win. Then you gotta win one of these games at Georgia Tech, at home against Virginia Tech, at Syracuse, even at Louisville is a winnable game. Not impossible that they win that game. They'll be the underdog though. So I think they can get to 6 wins, maybe 7.
We're moving along to Virginia at the bottom.
Just real quick, Roberto, sorry, I just wanted to call out. I have them losing all of their non-conference games, so just take that for what it's worth. Let's go on to Virginia.
Sorry about that. Virginia 3.5 wins over under.
I'm right around that number. I had 3, and I think it's going to be a tough season for them. Tony Elliott kind of walked into a tough situation last year. By the end of the year, we know what happened. It does seem like the team came together, and you hope everything works out. They're kind of a team you want to root for this year. I just don't know talent wise if they have it. They lost their stud linebacker Nick Jackson. I still have questions at quarterback. Tony Muskett was a very good FCS quarterback, but I'm not sure if he's ready to be not that they need him to be elite, but an upper half ACC quarterback. I don't think he's that. I think he's going to be a decent quarterback, and probably, funny enough, an upgrade over Brennan Armstrong last year, who really struggled in the offense. They have struggled to run the ball quite a bit for the last few years, even going back to Bronco Mendenhall's days here. And they lose their top 3 receivers. So, again, non-conference schedule you got to look at. They're getting Tennessee in their opener. They're like a 28-point underdog there. James Madison at home. That's not a gimme game. That's going to be a tough game for Virginia. At Maryland, they're going to be an underdog. They also play a home game against William & Mary in non-conference play. And William & Mary is a top 10 FCS team. So, even that game's not going to be a gimme for Virginia. They should win the game, though. Aside from that, your home games in the ACC, Duke, Virginia Tech, Georgia Tech, and NC State. I think they can win a couple of those, maybe probably beat William & Mary, but I don't see them winning on the road at Louisville, Miami, North Carolina, probably not at Boston College either. So I think they lose all their conference road games. So if you're only winning a couple of those conference home games, I think the max you're going to get to is 4, and it might be 3 or less. So I think Virginia's towards the bottom of the ACC for good reason.
Under is my lock. Under 3.5 for ACC.
ACC haters still is another under in the ACC.
Virginia's garbage.
Yeah. Georgia Tech, Brent Key took over last year. We're really towards the beginning of the season after 4 games. They come into the season with only a win total of 4.5. This is a tough look to me. I don't know.
Again, schedule makes a big difference, and this is a tough schedule. First off, you're getting Georgia in non-conference play, so you know how that game's going to go.
Chris, who's the Einstein that's scheduled at Ole Miss, and then Georgia?
Yeah.
Like, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Brent Key did not get any favors there. You got to give him credit, though. He did win 3 of his last 4 last year and got turned around what was a very dire situation for Georgia Tech after Jeff Collins was let go. So that they end up 5-7, which was a respectable season, but they were minus 89 yards a game in conference play. I'm sorry, minus 62 yards per game in conference play, minus 77 for the season. And like I said, the schedule really, you got those 2 SEC non-conference games, which you figure you're going to lose both of those. You're playing at Miami, at Wake Forest, at Clemson. The game at Virginia is not a guaranteed win. You're also hosting North Carolina. You got to figure they're going to probably beat South Carolina State, Bowling Green, probably favored at home against Boston College. Maybe you're favored against Syracuse at the end of the year. I had them at 5, so 4.5 sounds like the right number to me. This is not a team I'd touch because I think Brent Key could be a good coach. I just don't know. I think the schedule doesn't play well for them. I think they could be a team next year that could surprise some people.
I had no play on this, Rob, but I thought I see under. I see 4, but I wouldn't make a play on it. I am excited to see Haynes King. How about you, Rob?
I was going to say Haynes King could be the X factor. If he plays like a lot of people expected him to. But
Rob's a huge Texas A&M fan.
Monster. They cost me, although they, at the end of the season last year, they did make me a nice score against LSU. But other than that, they cost me big money all year. Virginia Tech. Now, listen, we already know Week 3's loss. You see that Week 3 game? They don't even get off the bus in Week 3.
That's one loss. What's their win loss?
Their win-loss total is 5.5. I think
Under.
That's a little high.
Under City. Chris, tell me you're with me. This is under City.
I had under, but Brent Pry, I think, is going to turn this thing around, and it does scare me. The other thing is they start 2-0 against Old Dominion and Purdue. I don't know that Purdue's going to be quite what they were last year.
Did you see Virginia Tech last year?
I did, and I understand that, but it was also their first year under a new head coach. They lost a lot of close games. They lost to NC State by a point. The Old Dominion game at the very beginning of the year was a game where it was turnover filled. They should have won that game. So if they win that opener, I think they could beat Purdue. The big question for me, again, quarterback, is it going to be Grant Wells or Kyron Drones? If it's Drones, I would like to take a shot on this team. But because I've seen too much of Grant Wells over the years, I just know what he is and what he's not. The other thing I really like about this team is the running back they brought in from North Carolina A&T, Bayshaw Tootin, who,
They've had 10 times.
Normally you see running back from North Carolina A&T won't translate, except for he ran for over 100 yards against both North Dakota State, who's got, let's be honest, a Big Ten level defense, and over 100 yards against Duke. So an ACC team, he topped 100, I think in like 10 or 11 carries.
Chris, I just want to point this out though. When you're looking at Va Tech, this O-line is thinner than a piece of paper. One guy goes down, this thing is, to quote Bobby Ross, womp womp, abandoned ship. Okay, that's what I'm concerned about. That offensive line is Scotch guard and Gorilla Glue.
Yeah, they are thin on the offensive line. Early in the season, though, against Old Dominion and Purdue, I think they survived that. At Rutgers, you guys are probably right. They're going to be the underdog there. But then at Marshall, if they win that game 3-1, with a couple ACC games that are winnable, We know they usually beat Virginia at the end of the year, so I personally have that as a win for Virginia Tech. Where are their other wins? At home against Syracuse could be a win. At home against Wake Forest could be a win. But I can't chalk those up until I see what the talent on the field looks like. I think they're going to be better than last year, but they were 3-8 last year, so getting a 6 wins might be a stretch. I think a year away from a bowl game, so I would take under, but I probably am not going to play this.
Roberto, give me the CUSA. Your favorite team.
Bob's favorite team.
Bob's
Loves the
favorite.
CUSA. CUSA, we have them here at, I'm not write this down. Is it 5.5 or 4.5? Hold on one second. I'll have to get my assistant on that. Syracuse I have at 6.5. Wow, that's high.
That is very high. What book is that?
This is on
West Bahamas Incorporated.
No, this is on the CBS site. I don't know what they're pulling these from, but they match up with my other ones. So 6.5 is their over under.
I think that probably makes sense. I mean, you look at their non-conference schedule. Their non-conference schedule is atrocious. Their first 4 games: Colgate, Western Michigan, at Purdue. They beat Purdue last year, and then Army. So
there you go.
At worst, you're 3-1. Now, here's where it gets tricky, because you are going to get slaughtered in your next 3 games. At home against Clemson. Well, the funny thing is, Babers always plays Clemson tough. So, but you got to think that's going to be a loss. Then at North Carolina, at Florida State, back-to-back. Going back to the Virginia Tech thing, Virginia Tech does catch Syracuse off a bye, so that is an advantage Syracuse there, but Syracuse on the road. And it's a Thursday night, so it's not a full 2-week rest. They get Boston College at home. Pitt, they always lose to then, and that's a home game being played at Yankee Stadium. Then at Georgia Tech at home against Wake Forest. I think 6-6. So I think that number is probably about right. I think, Babers gets him to another bowl game and keeps his job for another year. Rasputin.
How dare you talk about Bob's favorite coach?
What is your thoughts on this running back that they have? Do you think he's going to be able to replace Tucker?
Well, can he replace the Tucker of 2 years ago? No, he's not that. But can he replace the Tucker of last year? Absolutely, because Tucker wasn't very good last year.
No.
Tucker went down on first contact all the time. He just did not look like the same running back. And you look, he had 1,060 yards, 5.1 yards a carry, but I think 260 of that came against Wagner. He had one other game where he topped 100 yards. So, he's
Wagner football though. They've been, that's a tough team. I'm not going to lie to you. I saw them play in person last year.
Man, I feel bad when you saw that mess. I cracked up. I just realized today they had a guy get drafted. And it's like,
they did.
Yeah, Wagner had a guy get drafted. They're like one of the worst FCS teams in the country. They were getting blown out.
They actually called the Syracuse Wagner game last year.
I thought they did the same thing versus Rutgers too. They ran a running clock.
Probably.
Tough scenes. Wake Forest 6.5 wins over under.
Rule of thumb for me is, I don't have I would like to do this and see coaches. And I don't know where I'd find the information, but I would like to see each individual coach's record for going over under the season win total. Because I'll bet you Dave Clawson has a great record when it comes to exceeding expectations. Because every year, Wake Forest, that they have those middling expectations, he exceeds them. Last year was kind of tough because they were ranked so high to start the season. Well, the fact they were ranked at all, that's unheard of for Wake Forest to start the season. Usually they're unranked going into the season, picked 6th or 7th in their division, and they end up exceeding expectations and finishing in the top half of the division. This year they only have 11 starters back. They're losing Sam Hartman. Yeah, there's a lot of red flags, but this is when it seems like Dave Clawson does his best work. Mitch Griffiths, the starting quarterback, has been in the system for a few years now. So I think that Wake Forest, while I would be hesitant to say exactly what 7 games they'll win. You said 6.5, right?
Yeah, 6.5.
I would also think he would get it done. He's only had, not counting the COVID year, because that year's weird. He's only had since 2016, 2 years where he finished with less than 6 regular season wins. So, actually, no, I take that back. And yeah, okay. So yeah, 2 years he finished less than 6 regular season wins. So he consistently gets 7 or more regular season wins. So I somewhere along.
Are you of the belief? Are you of the belief that it's Clawson's kind of system that gets this much production out of the offense, or you just think Hartman was that good of a quarterback? I mean, you have probably one of the best receivers in Green in the ACC on there. Are you a Clawson? It's a system guy, or are you just it was Hartman? It's just and they're going to lose a lot without him there.
I think it's a combination of things. They were good when they had John Wolford there. Hartman obviously took them to another level, but they've had some very good offensive linemen when they were there. They've had defensive ends get drafted. They've had a string of good receivers, not all of them NFL caliber, but they have a couple guys this year that Clawson thinks that they're not taking a step back. A.T. Perry's gone, but Donovan Green, who was coming off the injury last year, so he wasn't quite what he was expected to be yet. But now he's a year removed from the injury. Jamal Banks had 636 yards and 9 touchdowns last year as their third receiver. So I think they still have the receivers to be effective in this offense. And Griffiths has been playing in the system for a few years now. So it is a little bit of a Clawson system, but I think that the Wake Forest model of developing guys, the old school, we get guys, we redshirt them, we keep them around for a few years, and then when the guys graduate, we've got guys that have been here for 3 years that know the system inside and out. That's the old school how college football programs used to run, and that's what Clawson's still doing to his best, despite the portal, despite all the other factors, and it's been successful for him. So we'll have to see if he can continue it with all the change in college football, but I respect the way he coaches.
I'll tell you, a coach I don't respect is the one who's coaching the Blue Devils, Roberto. What's the win-loss total for the Blue Devils?
Mike Elko, the pride of New Jersey. I mean, some are saying the next Nick Saban. I don't want to say it. I mean, people are saying it, though.
I've heard it said.
I've heard it said. 6 wins over under.
Oh, you guys. The schedule has me saying under. The talent on the field has me saying over.
Chris, where's that 6 win come from? Because
that's my problem, because
they're going to be 3-1. I think they beat Virginia. I think Wake Forest at home that's got Duke written all over it. But you got Pittsburgh at UNC, at Louisville, NC State at home. It really comes down to, what do you think about NC State? What do you think about at Louisville?
Well, I mean,
I've got 6.5 on FanDuel right now. I mean, so if you got to win 7, I mean, you got to be extremely bullish on this team.
And here's the thing, Duke, a lot of people don't realize this because they had a great year last year. They won 9 games, exceeded a lot of expectations. They also had the easiest schedule that they could have possibly landed.
How dare you talk about North Carolina A&T like that? How dare you?
Well, I mean, when you go back and you look, they caught Boston College in a bad year. They caught Virginia Tech in a bad year. They caught Wake Forest in a bit of a down year. Georgia Tech was in a bad year.
Some saying they caught Boston College in a bad decade.
Northwestern and Temple, both bad years. North Carolina A&T, Miami, bad year. So, you end up, I think they beat, was it one? They only played 4 teams that went to a bowl last year. Kansas, North Carolina, Pitt, and Wake Forest, and they went 1-3 in those games. So, they have 18 starters back, and Riley Leonard is a very good quarterback that is getting some NFL love. Like I said, talent on the field.
You also have Calhoun at wide receiver. I mean, that offense has something to it.
And Dwayne Carter is one of the best defensive linemen in the ACC.
Mm-hmm.
But the schedule, Clemson, Notre Dame, at Florida State, at North Carolina, I agree. But, they only lost to Pitt by 2 on the road last year. They beat Miami last year as a bad year for Miami, but they were a 9-point dog. They pulled some upsets last year, so I think that Elko and North Carolina, they should have beat North Carolina by all rights. They had a touchdown called back. Actually had 2 touchdowns called back at the end of the game. Then they missed a field goal that would have put them up 6, up 6, I believe. And North Carolina ended up driving down, scoring a game-winning touchdown with 14 seconds, I believe. They beat a lot of bad teams, but they did play competitively against some of the better teams they played. The schedule. So I'd say under, but Mike Elko seems like a guy that could surprise me. So I am hesitant towards saying that.
That's an overbet for me. Louisville, Brom's back. The juice around this team, the NIL, it seems like they're bringing in a lot of talent. There's a lot of buzz around Louisville. I mean, 8 wins. I think the schedule's a little soft. Maybe that's why they have it at 8.
Over under 8.5. The under is juiced to hell, -158.
Oh, okay.
I've seen some people, and we saw this the other day. Me and Phil were talking about this. One of the Action Network guys had tweeted that Louisville was going to be a favorite in every game. That's what we said. They're because we also looked at the Action Network projected lines, and they had them an underdog at Pitt, an underdog against Notre Dame, an underdog, I believe, at Miami. There was another game that they might have been a pick 'em at NC State or something, maybe vice versa, one of those. But we saw they were an underdog in at least 3 games.
If you think they're that good, Chris, does it really boil down to? I mean, you really have to assume they're winning at NC State, which I don't think is a gimme game. But you got to win 2.
I don't either.
You got
Definitely
you got to win 2 out of NC State, Notre Dame, Pittsburgh, Miami, Florida, and Kentucky. You got to win 2 of those.
We just talked about Duke. Duke's not going to be a gimme game.
I'm giving it because
Louisville will be favored in that game. Yeah,
they'll be favored. If you just go with, hey, we're favored, we're accepting that as a victory. That's a really tough schedule to get by. That's really tough. Like I don't think Miami's all that it's cracked up to be. So maybe there's one, but
how about the Cal transfer? How about this kid? What's your thoughts on this kid, Jack Plummer, coming in? Does he fit the system of Brom?
Well, he's already played in the system with Brom because he played for him at Purdue. He was at Purdue, started, was beaten out by O'Connell, and played pretty well.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, played pretty well. Transferred to Cal, threw for 3,000 yards last year, 21-9 ratio. So, yeah, he absolutely fits the system because he's played in it before. I like the running back, Jawar Jordan, Syracuse transfer 2 years ago that really emerged for Louisville last year, had 815 rushing yards. Lose a lot of the receivers, but Jamari Thrash, Georgia State transfer, and Kevin Coleman, the Jackson State transfer, that was the one that one of the kids that Coach Prime took off of the Power Fives. We had him as the number 2 ranked receiver in that recruiting class. So he's got talent at receiver, some questions on the offensive line, but they have a lot of depth. They had a lot of transfers there. We have no idea how that's going to shake out. Some questions about the size on the defensive line, which has been the issue for Louisville for years now, and why they've struggled with Kentucky, because Kentucky always very big in the trenches, and Louisville usually not very big in the trenches. He's trying to fix that. See if Jermaine Lole, the transfer from Arizona State 2 years ago, that came in last year but was out for the year in the opener, see if he can make a difference. They did add a lot of transfers, so it's going to be hard to see how they shake out. I had them at 8. I don't see how they're favored in all these games. I see a loss against Notre Dame, at Pitt, at NC State. I actually think they do lose that game. And one of the at Miami or Kentucky, I think, because until they beat Kentucky, I think they keep losing that game. Until I see it, I'm going to keep taking Kentucky.
You brought up NC State over under 6.5. The juice on the over here. People loving Brennan Armstrong. Bobcat, a certain Bobcat may or may not have put a mortgage payment on the over already. Your thoughts?
I like NC State, like the quarterback. We talked privately, me and you, about this. I am concerned, what the heck was going on last year, but he is back in the system that he was successful in 2 years ago with offensive coordinator Robert Dine when he was at Virginia. Some concerns at receiver, but I think they have the talent to step in, and in a nice system, receivers don't have to be super talented to be productive. We saw that at Virginia. A lot of their guys would put up big numbers. It's not like those guys were NFL receivers. Defensively, the defensive line has some depth. Savion Jackson, Davin Van, both returning starters coming back. Peyton Wilson's back for his 19th year of college. So it does give them a star in the middle of that defense.
He's actually got a 20-year pension, so that's not good for him.
And Aiden White, cornerback, was first team All ACC and was had 4 interceptions last year, one of the top corners in the ACC. One of my concerns was the run game. They really struggled to run the ball last year. They only had one running back to score a rushing touchdown. Their leading rusher, Jordan Houston, had no rushing touchdowns. They really struggled running in short yardage. A total of 5 rushing touchdowns all season from the entire team. That includes 3 by Demo Sumo Kambaya, who is now gone. He transferred out. So the only rushing touchdown actually returns from last year is by quarterback MJ Morris. And I'll tell you what, MJ Morris, I wouldn't totally count him out of that quarterback job. I was impressed how he played last year when he got a chance. So if Brennan Armstrong falters, I could see MJ Morris coming in and making a difference. Looking at the schedule, you get Notre Dame, you got Clemson. At Wake Forest is a tough game. You always you have very winnable games though. UConn, VMI, at Virginia. So you're probably starting 3-1. You get Louisville at home. We just said we like NC State to win that game at home against Marshall. That's 5-1 going into the Duke game. So at that point, what'd you say, 6.5? So yes, 5-1. You just got to win 2 of those remaining games of Duke, Clemson, Miami, at Wake Forest, at Virginia Tech, and North Carolina, which I think they would be able to do.
That's a bet on my list. CVD, do you got more time for us? I know you were up against it.
Yeah, we can go for a few more minutes.
Okay, let's do some quick hits here. Miami, the Hurricanes. Paul Scoop on the U. What's he going to be? Is he going to be happy? Is he going to be sad at the end of the year? Over under.
What's the number?
7.5.
I've seen it as high as 8.5.
Okay.
He's going to be encouraged, but not satisfied. I think they probably get to 8 wins. This is
7.5. Yes, you're right.
Yeah, this is not one I would touch. I do think they're improved, but 19 starters back, and they had some games last year like that Duke game where they had 8 turnovers. You got to think that they avoid those kind of fatal mistakes. I think Tyler Van Dyke will look more like the quarterback from 2 years ago. I think the system is going to play better to his talents this year. He really struggled in the Josh Gaddis system last year. But you change offensive coordinators this year with Shannon Dawson coming in.
There were so many rumors he was going to leave, right? Everybody thought he was leaving.
Yeah, there was talk about him going to Alabama.
Yeah.
And, the fact that Alabama, if it is true that they were interested in him, tells you he's talented.
Mm-hmm.
But, it just didn't work out last year. Once again, a lot of transfers from Miami, especially on the defensive and offensive line. They have a ridiculous amount of offensive line career starts. The most last year they were coming in. They had like over 200. They still have 120 despite losing some guys. So you have an experienced offensive line. Schedule, you're looking at a easy 4-1 start playing Miami of Ohio, Bethune-Cookman at Temple, and Georgia Tech. Questionable game against Texas A&M. I think they lose that game, so they're 4-1.
Don't sleep on the Owls. Don't sleep on the Owls.
Going into a tougher stretch of the schedule at North Carolina and Clemson, I think they lose both of those games. So you're 4-3. Win against Virginia. The NC State game is a toss-up. So worst case scenario, you're 5-4 at Florida State, Louisville, Boston College. So if you win against Louisville, you win at Boston College, that's 7 wins, assume the loss at Florida State. That's right at that number, like I said, which the NC State game becomes the one that either gets them over the hump or under. That's why I would stay away from it. Being that they're at NC State, I'd say they lose that game. So I would lean towards under, although I don't have it with me. I did originally think they were going to win 8 games, but I'll say 7/8. I'm not touching this.
I'm going to go with the over. Shout out to my man, Jared. He's another guy that lives and dies with his Canes. North Carolina up next. Now, Stu a long time. You don't have to admit to that on the show. Stu talks bad about every single quarterback, no matter if it's pro football, college football. The guy hates the position of quarterback. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if in high school the quarterback got with Stu's girl, something happened, bad things. He hates quarterbacks.
Somebody made me watch Mike McMahon as a child.
How dare you? Drake May is the only quarterback I ever heard Stu talk good about. North Carolina over at 8.5. How good do you think Drake May is? Do you think he's the second best quarterback in this class?
Yes, I think he's legit. I'm a big Drake May fan. Comes from a winning family, and I think this is the year where Mac Brown kind of gets North Carolina over that hump. Granted, they've gotten to the ACC title game before, but last year, they backed into it. It wasn't very impressive getting there. I think he can get them there this year. Schedule sets up nicely. That's going to be a great opening game against South Carolina, though. Want to see with the way Spencer Rattler ended the year, with the way South Carolina ended the year, does that carry over this year? Big game for North Carolina there. I think
I already have 2 mortgage payments on the over.
In
that first game.
That should be a high scoring game. Last year the concern was the defense that they underperformed quite a bit early in the season. They did get better as the season went, though. They played better towards the end of the year. Only they held Oregon at 28 points when I really thought Oregon might light it up with Bo Nix. I think they shed some of the baggage on that defense because a lot of guys transferred out after the season, but it didn't seem like they were really heartbroken about the guys that left. And a couple of them, 2 of them actually transferred to other schools for the spring, and then ended up leaving after the spring, going somewhere else.
Always a good sign.
Yeah. So, and those 2 guys started for North Carolina last year. So I think that signs are pointing up for their defense. I like the schedule. I think 8.5 is extremely reasonable. I had 10-2. I think they could even get to 11-1. Big advantage, you don't play Florida State. So you're only playing one of the perceived powers in the ACC at Clemson. You don't play a Notre Dame or anything like that. You're getting South Carolina on a neutral field. The game at Pitt is crucial. If they win at Pitt, I think they start maybe 9-0. I'm sorry, 10-0 going into Clemson. So that could be an easy over that you don't even have to watch the last few games.
And you got some juice on that over plus 115, 118.
Yeah, you're already home.
Yeah, I wasn't a big fan of Sam Howell, and a couple years ago when North Carolina was, coming into the season ranked 10th, and everyone was hyping up North Carolina before the season, I was real hesitant towards the hype on them, and they fell apart, especially defensively. Yeah. And Sam Howell didn't play like everyone thought he would.
Well, look at this year. Washington's going to try to go in a full tank mode so they can get Caleb Williams or maybe Drake May, which would be interesting. I hope they don't.
You give me North Carolina only 8.5 wins. Not 9-3 wins it for me. Even if they were to lose South Carolina, Pitt, and Clemson, they still cash that. Yeah, I'm taking it.
All right, Chris, I already made this bet. It's the most money I put on a future bet. The Panthers, the Fighting Narduzzi's, Michigan State's own, over under 6.5. They got a quarterback coming in, Phil Yurkovich. I mean, look, he came from some crumb schools. I'm not sure exactly what schools I'm forgetting it, but he came from some garbage schools, horrible schools. Now he's in a primetime position with a historical Big East power, no offense, Roberto, and easily going to pick up where Keaton Slavis left off. Yay or nay?
Yeah, I'm with you on Pitt. I like the talent they have coming back. Love the
and Yurkovich as well.
Yurkovich, yes,
same thing. Garbage schools, crumb schools.
My opinion before. Obviously Chris is the expert, but just my opinion. Okay, Djokovic stinks. Okay, he had Zay Flowers last year. I know their offensive line was bad. This guy didn't impress me one bit. Had one of the best receivers in college football. I think there was way too many excuses made for him. Just my opinion. I'm on the Pitt under. Bags, I'm on your side.
I think that the Boston College offensive line was a big problem for them last year, and I get that. Yeah, that was a huge concern. And the one concern I have with Pitt is Djokovic always gets hurt, but he does have a much better offensive line to protect him. I like the running back Rodney Hammond. You lose a Bonaconda, but I think they'll be okay. And the defense is a Pat Narduzzi defense, so I think they'll be fine. I think they go over that number, probably pretty conservatively. I think 7-8 wins at least.
FSU up next. I mean, this team.
Hey Rob, how about we do FSU Clemson in tandem, both at 9.5?
Let's do it.
Because I'll tell you this, Chris. Give me real quickly, which team gets over 9.5? FSU,
Clemson. Absolutely, no doubt about it. I'm not as high on Florida State. I have to see them play with expectations. I'm not a big fan of teams who haven't had expectations in a long time, or coaches that haven't had expectations at this level, and meeting them like North Carolina 2 years ago when they had a bunch of expectations and they fell short. I think Florida State could be in a similar situation. And this, you get LSU right off the bat. What happens if they lose that game? All these transfers they brought in could kind of ruffle the feathers. So I think that LSU could be, or Florida State would be the under. I love Clemson this year. I think Cade Klubnik is going to surprise some people. I think the Tigers could run the table in the regular season, go 12-0.
Beautiful. CVD, we're going to have you back all this season. Tune in. Check out ncsports.com. Preview magazine's coming out. Some of that content's already filtering. CVD.
Also, make sure you check out philsteele.com. We got the college football magazine. If you buy the physical magazine on philsteele.com, you also get the digital. So you get 2 for 1 since you're getting charged for the shipping through the website. Also, you can go to Barnes & Noble or Books A Million and get the magazine. Those are the only 2 stores that have it on shelves. A lot of them have sold out. So if you can't find it there, go to philsteele.com and we'll help you out. and get you the magazine. Also, the FCS
that
magazine,
digital works. That digital works just fine. You get it right there instantly.
Yeah, and the FCS magazine has come out, so I had a lot of fun writing that these last couple of weeks. So make sure you check out philsteele.com. And I'm on Twitter at ChrisV160.
Yeah, and that FCS magazine worth its weight in gold. CVD, thank you for the help, brother. Send our regards to the boss and our thank yous so you don't get in trouble. Roberto, we'll be back later this week. Until then, take care, brush your hair, and we'll see you after a while.